Hello and welcome to the Survey of Social Psychology. In this first video, I'm going to be talking about the structure of the class, what you're going to be doing, and at the end I'll talk a little bit about how to be most successful in this class. So we can go ahead and just jump right in. So obviously what we're looking at here, this is the Course As You Learn page. And I have this set up in a bunch of different sections here, and I'll walk through each one of these just so you know how everything is laid out and so you can find what you need. So first off, in this first section, we have the announcements. So that's, of course, where I'm going to be making announcements. When I send out an announcement, you'll get an email, but this is a good place to look if you want to look at past emails that I've sent. The syllabus, that's, of course, the syllabus. We'll run through that in a second here. And then my materials, that's going to be the link to the textbook, which, again, I'll talk about here in just a second. So before we get into the other sections, let's talk about the syllabus. And this will really help give you an idea of really what you're going to be doing and what the expectations are for this class over the summer. All right, so the stuff at the top, of course, that's me. So emailing me is going to be the best way to get a hold of me. I'll be in my office most of the time during the summer, but still email is usually the best way to get a hold of me. If you have questions, any questions throughout the summer session, if they're just kind of simple, straightforward questions, email is definitely going to be the best. If it's something longer, more in-depth, or you have a lot of questions to ask, definitely feel free to shoot me an email and we can set up a time to meet on Zoom. And so that way, sometimes it's just a little bit easier to meet on Zoom rather than sending 15 emails back and forth. Anyway, just know that that is an option for you. All right, so then we have the course description. Of course, this is a class about social psychology. You'll learn a lot more about that in the later videos. Then we have the textbook here. I already mentioned that. That's going to be linked through the through As You Learn. Also, throughout the kind of sections that I'll show you in a little bit here, there's going to be links to each one of the readings that you'll have. We're definitely not going to be going over the entire textbook. There's just certain sections that are going to be assigned readings. But again, I'll show you that in a bit. In terms of your grade, there are kind of two major components to this class. The first one would be the exams, and the next one are these online quizzes. So with the exams, there's going to be 4 different exams. Each exam covers a certain section of the course, meaning like the final exam is not like a comprehensive exam. It's just that last section of the course. So there's really 4 different kind of sections of the course. The exams are all multiple choice. They have somewhere around 35 questions each. And they cover, of course, the material that's in the lecture videos and the readings. The exams really focus mostly on the information from the lecture videos. So kind of in terms of kind of budgeting your time, you really want to focus on watching the lecture videos and then using the textbook really as kind of like a supplemental source. So like if you have questions or you're not really sure about something, you can use you can use the textbook to kind of help solidify kind of the information that maybe you didn't get from the lecture videos. But really for this class, especially during the summer, I would definitely encourage you to focus on the material in the lecture videos. There might be a few little times here and there where there's going to be important information that comes from the textbook. I'll try to alert you to that, and I'll show you where I do that in a second here. But the gist is definitely focus on the lecture videos for the exams. Obviously, the exams all online. They're open book, open notes, so you can use you can look back at the lecture videos. You can have the textbook open. You could use your own notes when you're going through the exams. The exams are timed, so you have 90 minutes for the exam. That should be plenty of time for a 35 question exam. But one thing that I would kind of point out here is that in the past, there have been a lot of times where people have been like, oh, okay, great. This is open book, open note exam. So that way it's going to be nice and easy. If I get to a question that I don't know the answer to, I can just look it up and it's totally fine. And to some extent that is true, but I would still highly recommend that you prepare and study for the exam. So by preparing for it, I would say before you start the exam, make sure that you have your notes all ready, that you have maybe the PowerPoint slides that I've posted on As You Learn. You have those pulled up and organized. You have any of the lecture videos. You have the textbook ready. So you have kind of everything organized. So if you do have a question, you can just quickly go and find the answer to that. And that's really going to be kind of one of the main things. The other thing is, I would also really encourage you to study for the exam, which again, in some ways that seems obvious, but a lot of times people don't do that when they have an open book, open note exam, because again, the mindset is that you can just go look up the information, you don't need to study for it. But the problem there is, even though 90 minutes is plenty of time to take a 35-minute exam, it's really only plenty of time if you can answer a lot of the questions relatively quickly. And then for the questions that you don't know the answers to, those you take the time and you find the answer in the textbook, in the notes, wherever it is. But if you're having to look up every single question, you're going to run out of time. So you really want to make sure that you kind of know the material going into the exam, you're ready to take it, and that way it can kind of go as smoothly as possible. All right, so anyway, like I said, there are 4 different exams. I have on the As You Learn page, I'll show you in a second here, I have kind of recommended due dates for the exam, and I say this in here, that I would highly encourage you to complete the exams throughout the summer session. So don't wait until, the last week and you're having to cram and watch, 40 hours of videos, and nobody wants to do that. So definitely try to make sure that you have a schedule and you're taking the exams throughout the summer session. That being said, technically the exams aren't due until the last day of the summer session, so June 26th at noon. So that's when all the exams are due. So the reason that I do that is just because there might be times where you're traveling, you're out of town, you don't have an opportunity to take an exam, and that's fine. So if you have to move things around a little bit, no big deal. But definitely don't push everything to the end. Definitely people have done that in the past, and as you might guess, that typically does not work out well. So try to set up a schedule for yourself so you're watching the videos and taking the exams throughout the summer session, not pushing it off to the end. All right, so that's the first kind of major component of the class. And the second component would be these quizzes. And again, I'll show you where you find these in a second here. But the gist is that there are 6 of these quizzes that you'll take throughout the summer session. I'm going to count your grade on the top 5. So in other words, if you don't have time to get to one of them, if you just don't do as well on one of them, no big deal. That all gets dropped. Like it says here, I highly encourage you to complete the quizzes before each exam. And again, I'll show you kind of what I mean by that. But the gist is that these quizzes are really meant to kind of prepare you for the exams. And with these quizzes, you can take them twice. So you'll take it the first time, it'll tell you which questions you missed, and then you can take it again and you'll get the higher score of the 2. So that way, it's really meant to be kind of like a learning process, right? You take it the first time, see what you know, see what you don't know, and then use that to kind of, inform you for the second time. The quizzes, I would say, the questions on the quizzes are a little bit easier than the questions on the exams. And that's intentional. Like it says in here, they're really just designed to prepare you for these exams. And so if you're taking the quizzes and you're struggling with the questions on the quizzes, that really highlights like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, I need to go back and I need to, rewatch some of the videos. I need to, look at the textbook. I need to read things. And so if you're struggling on the quizzes, the exams are going to be much more challenging. That being said, if you're doing really well on the quizzes and you know the information, then that kind of highlights, okay, maybe you're prepared, you're ready to go and take those exams. So that's kind of the purpose of those exams or the quizzes. All right, so in terms of your grade, it really is just adding up the scores that you get on the exams and the quizzes. So there's 450 points total. There's no weird weighting or anything like that. It's just, how many points do you get? Divide by 450, right? That's your final grade in the class. All right, so then attendance, of course, this is a asynchronous class, so there's no attendance. That being said, it's very important that you watch the lecture videos. I'll highlight this or talk about this a little bit later, but the gist is in the past, you can really see the difference between the people who are doing well versus not well in the class based on who's actually watching the videos. Then the last thing to highlight here is just with emailing me. So as I mentioned, emailing me, best way to get a hold of me. If there's a situation where I haven't gotten back to you in 2 or 3 days from an email, let me know. Feel free to send a follow-up email. Just say, oh hey, sent you an email a couple days ago. You haven't gotten back to me. Just want to see if you've had time to answer that question. I just don't want there to be a situation where it's like I get 20 emails in a day, then I respond to 19 of them, and I just happen to miss yours. So if that happens, if I haven't gotten back to you in a couple days, let me know. I really try to get back to emails quickly during these summer sessions because, of course, everything's so compacted. Then in terms of the rest of the syllabus, it's just the university policies that are on like just about every syllabus you probably get. All right. So there's the basics of what the class is. You're going to be, watching videos, doing readings, taking exams, and quizzes. All right, now where is everything located? How do you find everything? So first off, of course, in this exams section here, you have all of the exams. And so notice here with each one of these exams, I have these recommended completion dates. So for exam 1, complete that by the 4th, and then the 11th, 19th, and 26th. And so this just spreads out when you're going to be completing these exams. So you can, watch the videos, do the readings. It gives you about a week or so for each exam, and it has them nicely spread out. Of course, as I mentioned before, you don't have to complete them by these dates. The last date to complete everything is noon on the 26th. So as long as everything's completed by then, that's fine. But again, I would just encourage you to kind of complete them, somewhere around these days so you don't have too much to do at the very end of the summer session. All right, so kind of more importantly here would be for each one of the sections here. Remember I mentioned that there are kind of 4 sections. Each one corresponds to each one of the exams. In terms of what you're going to be doing, I set everything up into these different subsections, right? So you got the main exam 1 readings, lectures, and videos section. And then here we have all of the subsections in there. So the first one's pretty straightforward. That's just the video that you're literally watching right now. So that's nothing special. But the rest of them, I have them all kind of set up in the same way. So it'll be, the section. This is kind of intro to social psychology. Just talk a bit about like what actually is social psychology. And then for each one of these subsections, it has readings, and this will be a link to the readings in the particular textbook. Then it has the lecture videos here, and so here are all the videos to actually watch. And then it has PowerPoint files. And so the PowerPoint files, these are literally the PowerPoint files I'm going through in these lecture videos. I mean, the vast majority of these lecture videos are me lecturing. Every once in a while, there's kind of external videos that I'm linking to, but most of them are me lecturing. And so these are the PowerPoint files that I went through. Those can be useful for some people. Some people like to have the PowerPoint files kind of available. So when they're taking notes, they can kind of see what the notes are on the screen, or, you can copy and paste things. And so that can be beneficial. If you don't want to use the PowerPoints or don't want to look at those, that's totally fine. As long as you're looking at the lecture videos, that's really what the most important thing is. I should note with the PowerPoint files, I put PowerPoint files on here because that's just what I was using. I know a lot of people don't use PowerPoint. You might be using like Google Slides. That's totally fine. Remember, Google Slides can open up PowerPoint files, so you can still open them up through Google Slides if you don't have PowerPoint. So anyway, there's a number of these different subsections. So, the intro to social psych, it's got the reading, the videos, and the PowerPoint files. And then, there's the next one, the history of social psychology. And then it's got the reading, lecture videos, PowerPoint files, and you'll see that same structure throughout. Then what we have here is after every few kind of sections here, there'll be a quiz. And so, of course, this is the first quiz. And this quiz would then correspond to the information that's kind of above it, right? So this quiz, the quizzes, I don't think I mentioned this, but the quizzes have somewhere around 9-10 questions on them. And it'll have questions from the top 2 sections here. And then you would take that quiz, you go to the next section, methodology. This one actually just doesn't have any videos, it's just the reading. But then, you have the readings, lecture videos, and then the PowerPoint files. Again, for each one of these sections, and then the next quiz. And then this quiz, of course, would correspond to these sections here. And then after you kind of go through all of these different sections, take the quizzes, then I just have a little subsection here, which has these study terms and readings here. And so what this is a list of the terms that I went through in all of the lecture videos. And so this could be a good way to essentially kind of test yourself to study before you take an exam, because you can look through these and you could say, okay, well, do I know what motivated reasoning is? Do I know what the two-step process of making attributions is? And so you can look at those and kind of quiz yourself, test yourself to make sure you're ready for the exam. And again, this covers all the material that's on the exam. And then down here, I have these, what I call important sections. Really what this is these are sections from the textbook. They're in the assigned readings already. So in theory, you would have been reading these. But these are sections where I have information that I either only briefly cover in the lecture videos or maybe don't have time to cover it all. And I just want to make sure that you're looking at those. Another way of thinking about this is there's probably going to be a question on the exam that comes from these different sections. So these are good sections to kind of look over beforehand, before you take an exam, to make sure you know the material that's in these particular sections. But that's the purpose of this PDF here. It's kind of like a little study guide-ish to prepare you for the exam. All right, so then in this particular section here for the exam one readings, you would start at the top, you would be watching all of these different videos. When you get to the quiz, you take the quiz, move along, look at the study terms and readings. Once you've completed this section, great, then you go up and you can take the exam, or I would say you're ready to take the exam. Obviously, you can take the exams at any time. And then once you take that first exam, then you go to the next one, right? And same thing, we have these different sections. Each one has readings, videos, and PowerPoint files. There'll be a couple different sections, and then you have the quizzes and so on, and then the study terms at the bottom. And so each one of these 4 sections is set up in a very similar way, right? And so you always have those different subsections with the different readings, videos, and PowerPoint files, and then different quizzes kind of distributed throughout. So really, that is kind of the entire class there, right? Because as you're going through them, you're going to be taking the quizzes. That's part of your overall grade. And then when you finish each one of these sections, watching the videos and doing the quizzes, then that's when you would complete the exams. And so then by the end of the summer session, you will have completed all exams and you've completed the course. I mentioned this before, but just to kind of, make sure it's clear, when this says complete by these different dates, those are just the recommended dates. Everything has to be done by the 26th. That being said, you can also complete things early. In past summers, I've had situations where people are going to be out of town during that last week of the summer session. They literally finish the class like a week early. And so definitely, if that works better for your schedule, you can do that. Again, just making sure that you're kind of doing everything, watching all the videos and so on. All right, so in terms of kind of success in this class, so having taught this class a few times in the summer, I would say one of the main points, and maybe this is obvious, maybe not, one of the main things is just making sure that you're watching these different lecture videos. It's very easy to just kind of scroll through here, look at the PowerPoints and say like, oh yeah, I know this information. But in these videos, I'm really giving a lot of information, and those exams, as I mentioned, I'm pulling, typically directly from those lecture videos. So the way that I phrase things in a video is similar to the way that I'm phrasing them on the exam. And so it's really important that you're actually watching these lecture videos. I have a lot of links to the videos. The reason they're split up like this is I tried to make the videos relatively short. So sometimes I had a longer video and I would chop it in half. And that way they're usually 15, maybe 20-minute videos. And that makes it a lot easier for a couple reasons. One, it's just, as it's just hard to focus on a lecture video for a lot longer than that. The other is that hopefully that can help you to kind of keep you organized when you're going through these different videos so you don't forget where you're at, that sort of thing. Speaking of that, the other kind of tip for success that I would say is make sure when you're going through the videos, one, you're taking notes. That's beneficial for a couple reasons. One, it really just helps you to focus and stay focused on what's happening in the video. It's really easy to get distracted with videos, even more so than when you're, in a class doing lectures, that sort of thing. It's really easy to get distracted by things around you. And so if you're taking notes, that really kind of forces you to focus and pay attention to what's going on in the video. So definitely I would encourage you to take notes. Also, I would say when you're taking notes, what people have done in the past that seems to be really helpful is not only take notes on what I'm talking about, but also make sure to take notes on or note which video this information is coming from. So it's like, oh, hey, when you start the, what about personality video, that then you maybe highlight that or indicate that somewhere. And that can be helpful when you're going through the exam. If you're going through the exam and then you don't really understand something about, when I was talking about personality, oh great, you know which video to go through, you know where to find it in your notes, that sort of thing. So that's really helpful. The other thing that can be really helpful for why you're kind of writing down the title of the lecture video that you're on there, the reason for that is that when you're going through these, especially with some of these bigger sections, here, there's a lot of videos. So it's easy to kind of forget, wait, which one was I on? What is it on? Heuristics and biases or heuristics and biases continued? And so that way, if you have in your notes, oh, here's the one I was on, here's my notes, you know exactly where to pick up. And so that way, you know what you've watched, what you haven't watched. Because of course, you don't want to get to the exam and realized, oh, I missed like one of these sections. I missed a bunch of these videos. That's going to be really problematic. All right. And then I guess the last thing that I would say in terms of kind of success. So assuming you're watching the videos, you're taking the notes, you're focusing on everything, you're writing down which videos are on. The last thing that I would say is this class has, I don't know, it can seem maybe a little bit easier than it actually is. Not that I would say this is a super overly challenging class, but because the class, the way that it's structured, your grade is really just based on the exams and the quizzes. So if you're not kind of keeping up with the videos, if you go into an exam and you're not really prepared and you don't do very well on that, there's not a whole lot of opportunities, aside from the other exams, of course, there's not a whole lot of other assignments or things that you're going to be turning in or papers or anything like that. There's not other things just to kind of like buffer your grade there. And so you really do want to take these exams seriously and making sure that you're actually kind of, focusing on the exam, that you're paying attention to what the information is going to be, you're studying beforehand and so on. So it really is kind of important to do that. All right, and so then the last thing that I would say here, and I kind of already mentioned this earlier, but just to make sure it's clear, when you're in an asynchronous class like this, it's very easy to feel, maybe like disconnected from the class, right? Because, you're not coming to class, you're not interacting with me, that sort of thing. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Definitely shoot me an email. I'd be happy to meet with you. If you go through one of the exams and you go through your first exam and you really don't do as well as you kind of wanted to, and you really did, watch the videos and you studied and you still didn't do very well, then definitely meet with me. I'd be happy to go over the exam with you, look at the questions that you missed, see what kind of questions you have, and then really kind of help you for the following exam. So I'm definitely happy to work with you there. All right, so I think that's everything. So as I mentioned, if you have any questions about the class, feel free to shoot me an email. If not, good luck with the class, and hopefully everything goes smoothly.